Welcome to the Transform Your Wedding podcast, a how-to guide for taking your wedding to a whole new level. Here's your host, Marie Kubin from Rent My Wedding.
Hey everyone, today we're talking about everything you need to know when it comes to hiring a cake designer. I'll be chatting with Jenna and Ashley, the founders of Jenna Ray Cakes. It's a boutique bakery based in Winnipeg, Canada, with a massive worldwide following. So let's jump right in and talk all about cakes. Hi, Jenna and Ashley. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to talk with you guys about wedding cake because, I mean, who doesn't love wedding cake, right? So, and it can be a lot, though, when you think about finding the perfect cake. So I'm hoping we can go over kind of a roadmap for couples that are just getting started and they're trying to figure out how to get the perfect wedding cake. So first things first, what's one thing that you think every couple should know when it comes to wedding cakes?
Well, I think the number one question that I get and the number one shock that I get is how expensive they are. I think most people make a budget for a wedding without actually doing research into what things actually cost. So they're setting unrealistic expectations. So I think that is the number one thing because that's going to dictate what kind of size you get, what kind of style, it pretty much dictates everything. So as long as you're comfortable with a certain amount and you know what that's going to get you, then I think you're setting yourself up on a really good spot.
Yeah, and that's not to say if you have a small budget, you can't get a beautiful wedding cake. There are ways to work, as long as it's a realistic budget, there are ways to work within that. But if you want the grand sugar flower, sugar frills, 5 tiers, that's a piece of art and it's going to cost for the time and the skill that goes into it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So just having realistic expectations when you go into it as far as budget.
Exactly.
And now when it comes to finding someone to do your wedding cake, what's the best way to kind of approach that? How do you find the perfect cake vendor?
I think nowadays people definitely look at a ton of photos. So I think if you're gravitating towards a certain style of cake, and they all kind of look similar, then you can find the designer who does that. Sometimes I get reached out to a lot. I'm in Winnipeg, obviously, so I can't make a cake for someone in California or wherever. But they'll ask me if I have any recommendations for people in their area that do similar work to what I do. So that's a good thing you can always do if you don't know where to start in your own city. Another thing is to talk to wedding planners in your city also, that they could probably point you in the right direction, because sometimes if you have never been in the market for a big, beautiful cake before, you might not know where to look. So I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and always ask around. And I think the wedding planners are a great resource for any bride because they'll know what vendors are like to work with as well. And I think that's also really important. They need to be skilled, but they also need to be professional and ensure you're going to get a quality product on time, delivered safely, all that stuff.
And it's also really important to know too what your your venue restrictions are, because lots of venues won't take vendors who aren't licensed or don't have a commercial kitchen space, things like that. So that's something to keep in mind also, because there's a lot of at-home bakers who make beautiful work, but sometimes they're not accepted in some venues. So that's something to note also before going ahead and booking or getting too far along in the process and realizing you can't actually go with them.
Oh yeah, that's such a good tip.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to designs, there's so many options out there. So how do you even start? Is it best if, say a couple find some pictures that they like, or is it best to just meet with your vendor first and go from there?
I think if you know what kind of style of cake you want and you have a bunch of inspiration photos, those are a great starting point. I think if you don't know what you want and you're open and you want something a bit more unique, the best thing you can do is send Jenna a picture of your dress, your overall theme for your wedding, your color palette ideas, even like architecture you like, or like something that inspired you that's not necessarily a cake. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah,
that's where Jenna can create something
definitely
truly unique.
The most fun way to design a cake is having a lot of creative freedom. But then also it is hard if they just come with like, I don't care, do whatever you want, is really, really hard, because then there's so many options and you might come up with something that you think is beautiful, but they might not love as much. So we definitely want to give some direction. And if you're really not set on a certain cake design, then definitely leave it up to your cake designer if you trust them. And you're obviously hiring them for a reason. You like their work, you like their aesthetic. So it's always best to leave it up to the professionals for the most part.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip because, and I think it's helpful for couples too, because it takes the pressure off you. You don't have to come up with the cake design. That's what you guys are here for, right?
That's what you're paying us for. So
definitely. And how about, design wise, what's trending right now?
It's hard to say because obviously a lot of weddings got canceled this year. So cakes so we'd probably be in the planning stages of next year already right now, but things are kind of halted. But I think with trends, especially nowadays with Pinterest and Instagram out there, trends keep recycling way faster, I think, than they would have before. So something that was trendy 3 years ago is still trendy now. And I think it's important to not get caught up in trends and really stick to something that's more timeless and is going to really resonate with you forever. So if you want a cake, say you see like what are they called? The geo cakes everywhere. And you're like, well, that's cool. Everyone's getting in, must be nice. Like, let's do that. Really make sure that that's a cake you're going to want to look at 20 years from now. It's still going to mean something to you. So you want to make sure it matches your wedding, and you want to make sure that, that it's, I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, you don't just want to copy a picture that you see online. You want to make it your own for the most part.
Yeah, I think a surefire way to know that you're going to love your cake in a few years, even with trends changing so rapidly, is to include personal touches. So for example, for my cake and for Jenna's cake, Jenna included blueberries on both of our cakes. And they were still subtle and just here and there, but they both remind us of our childhood and our grandparents, and that's a super special thing to us. So I think, yeah, you see that picture, then you see the blueberries, and that's just like an instant beautiful moment, and that's something beautiful to remember. And I think any way you can tie in those subtle details is going to ensure that you're going to love it forever.
Yeah, it's like anything that's super trendy in a moment, even if it comes to fashion or a wall color choice, in 5 years, it's probably going to be like really old news, and you maybe won't want to look at it anymore. So yeah, it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you won't love it at the time. There's nothing wrong with following trends too, but it's just always keeping that in mind that you can make it your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Trying to make your voice shine through in every detail of your wedding, from, the fashion to even the cake. And I think it's so good point too that, a trend isn't necessarily what's going to look the best on your wedding photos later. So if you're flipping through that album, you're going to have the cake cutting picture there. So it's nice when you have something that's also kind of timeless, that's going to look really beautiful and have good memories too. So
exactly.
Now, when it comes to actually choosing the size of the cake, there's, again, so many options. You can have these huge cakes. You can have so many different layers. How do you start there? Is it based on the number of guests, or how do you pick the size of the cake?
Yeah, so sizes of cakes, I think some people have a very clear idea. Like, I want 4 tiers. I don't care how much it feeds. That's the look I want. Some people are very clear on that part of it. But other people just like, I don't know, what do you suggest? So we do per serving is how we price our cakes. And for example, our standard 3-tier feeds 50 people to 75 is the bigger size of the 3-tier. And then a 4-tier feeds 90 plus. So if you're getting over that point, then that gets into the really large cakes. Some people want a huge cake but only have like 100 guests, and they want like a 5 or 6-tier cake. And that would be the only situation where I'd suggest a styrofoam tier. I try to stay away from that as much as possible. It doesn't really save you money. It's more just less wasteful, because most of the time comes from the cost comes from the time spent decorating. But I think that if you want a huge statement, then of course, like, get as big as you want, and you can figure out the servings after. But with size comes price. So that's also a huge hindrance on some people also.
And especially with the COVID-sized weddings, we're doing a lot more smaller, intimate weddings now. So a mini 3-tier cake feeds around 50. So that's always a good option. You're still getting that tiered cake. You're not spending as much on it as you normally would, but it's still a little grand and will feed who you want it to feed. So that's
and it's still that classic kind of wedding silhouette. So you can still get that in a small serving size.
Yeah. And we still do a lot of cutting cakes as well, and that's just a single tier, mostly for the couple for the cutting of the cake photo. Usually they have other desserts as well, and then a lot of couples like to save that cake and freeze it and then cut it on their first anniversary again. As long as you saran wrap it and keep it really frozen, it'll be great in the year.
Perfect. Yeah, I did that on my first anniversary, and we were just kind of hoping for the best when we pulled it out of the freezer.
It probably won't be as good, but it'll still be fun.
So now you kind of brought up my next question, actually, talking about budgets and weddings. So, what about the couples that have this idea that they want this beautiful cake and they want it to be a really big statement at the wedding, but they just don't have the budget? What are some kind of tips or tricks where you can get something that's going to be really wow, but on a smaller budget?
I think one of the things that I notice the most is people have a immediate they immediately think that buttercream means rustic, and that's not the case. You can get a really beautiful, smooth buttercream finish that looks like fondant, and it's a lot cheaper. So that's something I always recommend to people because Jenna does, and our cake designers do super sharp corners, and it's very sophisticated and elegant.
The buttercream's very white. It's not that like ivory color that lots of people I think immediately assume.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a big misconception out there, and that's something that people can note. And a lot of people, I mean, I personally love fondant, but a lot of people don't like the taste of it. So it's a great option that's also a budget saver.
Yeah, decoration-wise, it's very limiting in what you can do with it. You can't do the frills, you can't do a lot of different textures and things like that, but it is definitely an option for those people who want to spend a bit less. Another option too, I love doing sugar flowers. I think it's a beautiful accent to any cake, and they also last forever, so it's a good keepsake too. But if you wanted to go with real flowers, especially if you're doing a buttercream cake, they go well together, and then that way you also save a ton of money too. So you can definitely work around it, and you can always have a beautiful cake at any budget. It's just gonna kind of depend on size and the ultimate details.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, yeah. Now, another thing, for a while especially, I saw that a lot of people were doing cupcake towers or something different than the traditional wedding cake. So what are some other things that you've seen couples do? If they want to do something different than cake, what would you suggest?
I love our macaron towers we do. They are, so they come with an acrylic stand, and the macarons are placed basically in rings around. So you can get a smaller or large one. And that's a really fun thing because not customers at your wedding, but guests at your wedding can come up and just grab a macaron right off the tower. So that's a really fun one to do. And it's pretty grand too. You can customize it, and customize the flavors as well.
Yeah, you'll never hear me recommend anything besides a cake because I make them. I think a cake is beautiful, and when else can you get a big 3 or 4 tier cake in your life? But if you want to, then yeah, that's a great second option. Or have a cake as well as that is a nice option too.
Yeah, for both Jenna and myself, we both had the grand cakes, which I think is fair because Jenna's the cake designer.
Yeah.
And then we also had little
Dessert
treats to
tables.
accompany the cake as well. And then Jenna actually made her cake, and it was all a styrofoam cake so that she could keep it forever. So we bought this huge acrylic box, and that's sitting in her
Sitting in my
basement right
basement.
now.
I'll have to set it up somewhere. But
Yeah. And then we just served large 10-tier cakes, which were never shown. They were just
10-inch.
cut 10-inch cakes. So they were just cut in the back of the venue and then served. So everyone still got cake, but
Oh, nice. Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I mean, what's a wedding without cake? Please have the cake. And if you want other stuff, it can just be extra. That's my
yeah,
vote.
I mean, obviously I'm biased, but that's
yeah,
my opinion.
we're a little biased, but
So now I know you also have a new cookbook. That's so exciting.
yeah. I know. I can't believe it's almost here. It's been 3 years in the making now, and biggest project of our lives for sure.
Yeah.
And it comes out October 6th. So we're so excited. It's over 100 recipes, and the recipes that we use in our bakery every day. We didn't skimp on anything. It's full of really useful tips and information from our bakers, and solid recipes and beautiful photography. And we're really, really excited to see what everyone thinks.
Yeah, and it's great for anyone from if you've ever only baked cupcakes or not even anything, you can still bake things in this cookbook.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're really experienced and skilled, and you can still use recipes also. So it's it's just the best thing ever, I think.
Yeah.
It
Covers all the bases.
It really does.
Oh, wow. So you're literally giving away your secrets to all those beautiful things we see on your Instagram. You're going to tell everyone.
I was a little resistant at first to give away our recipes, but our brand is so much bigger than just the recipes. And I think that it's the worst when you spend the time to buy the ingredients and the time to buy the cookbook and everything, and then it just doesn't work out. It's super frustrating. So we obviously wanted to give a really good recipe, and it's ones that we tested.
Yeah, and we're just based in Winnipeg, and if we want people everywhere to be able to make our cookies and make our macarons and try them at home. So we're not gonna be able to reach everyone with our bakery, so we're bringing it to them.
Oh, I love that. And I can't wait. I actually pre-ordered a copy of your book too.
Thank you. I hope you love it.
And can you tell everyone how they can find your cookbook if they want to order it too?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, Indigo, chapters, all the major bookseller sites. Generate Cakes and Sweet Treats is the title. And also your local independent bookstores will carry them all across Canada and the US. And yeah, we're excited to see where that goes.
Yeah.
October 6th.
Well, good. Well, any other tips that you want to share with everyone when it comes to picking the perfect wedding cake?
I would say, as a cake designer, leave it up to your cake designer. If you've done the research and you know that you love their work, it's always fun to get guidance, but really let them do their thing, unless of course you're very particular on what exactly you want. But it's always fun to kind of be a little bit surprised on your wedding day, but pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, for sure. And it's good too, because they know the industry inside and out. They know what's been done a million times. So you're going to get something a bit more fresh and unique if you do it that way.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing all of your advice and your insights about cakes, and tell everyone how they can get in touch with you guys and follow you on social media.
We're at Generate Cakes across all social platforms. So Instagram is kind of where we share the most, but.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys definitely need to check out their Instagram page. It's insane. I'm not even getting married. I'm done with that, but I can't stop just like looking at all the ideas, and I want to have another party just so I can have all those beautiful things.
Yeah, I spent so much time on all the photos, and it's beautiful. She does such a good job.
Well, good. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. It was so fun talking with you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed learning all these tips about how to find the perfect wedding cake. And don't forget, you can see all of our podcast episodes over at transformyourwedding.com. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Rent My Wedding, your one-stop shop for event rentals. Order online and rentals are delivered right to your door. Shipping is free both ways nationwide. Rent lighting, backdrops, photo booths, and more. With the most 5-star reviews in the industry, Rent My Wedding makes rentals easy and affordable. Book your rentals today at www.rentmywedding.com.